A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin ya rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing great. Today inshallah we are going to begin the second last lecture series of Ism, and this ninth lesson is all about different modes of stress. Um, we have already covered this topic of stress previously in sections B and to some extent in section C as well. And in this lesson, in this lesson series, rather, the ninth lesson and all of its various sub lessons, we are going to see various kinds of modes or methods that are used in Arabic to give stress to a statement. All right, we have already covered the negative emphasis in lesson 8, and now in all the sub lessons of lesson 9 we are going to study various modes of stress in the non-negative or the regular sentences. Okay, so this first lesson is all about the overview, and this little picture here summarizes all the modes of stress that we are going to study over the next few lessons, inshallah. Okay, so let's begin our lesson by, of course, asking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Rabbi Yassir wala tu'assir wa tamim bil khair. Amin ya rabbil alamin. Alright, so you see a pentagon over here and it says modes of stress. Alright, now what are the 5 basic modes of stress? They include repetition, sequence alteration, making an ism nakra, using various add-ons, and then using separate words. Alright, now this is a classification that you wouldn't really find in any textbook. They have been mentioned or categorized so arbitrarily, which means that I have just grouped the similar manners or similar modes together, alright, just for our ease. So the first thing that we see here is repetition. Alright, so it could either be the repetition of either a single ism or a single word or a phrase, alright, or even the entire sentence. Okay, so that's how stress is produced. Well, actually this repetition thing is something which is common to almost all the languages, and you're going to find it in English as well. Okay, next we have the second one, which says that you make the ism nakra. Okay, now so far we have learned that if an ism is nakra, it means that it is not special. Okay, however, there is an exception to this rule, this generalization, and if you see there are conditions that you will come across this situation, you will just know just by the context that there is some kind of stress in this statement or in this ism, in this scenario. Okay, so you'll just understand it by just the background and by just looking at the context. Okay, so there's no need to worry as to when you are going to assume a particular ism as special or unstressed or stressed. Okay, you'll just know. At this moment, simply know that making an ism nakra is also a means of putting stress to that subject. Okay, so that's our, and we will learn all of these with many examples, inshallah. Okay, next we have the method of sequence alteration. Now we had already touched briefly on this sequence alteration thing in lesson 3, in lesson 3 of section C, okay, where I told you the Jumla Ismiya and its structure and how you can bring about some modifications to its sequence and what impact it holds. Okay, so I have already touched very briefly on this subject, this sequence alteration, and how it impacts the entire statement. Okay, so this is also how you can put stress. So you've got khabar, mubtada, fa'il, maf'ul bihi. So if you alter their usual sequence, their usual placement in a sentence, it produces some kind of stress. Okay, all right, now by the way, if you haven't already studied or learned about the sequence alteration thingy, I have already elaborated it to some extent in lesson 3, of section C. Okay, so go back to Jumla Ismiya and its structure and just give it a watch. You'll understand it inshallah. Alright, next we have add-ons. Now, what do I mean by add-ons? And how do I differentiate these add-ons and the separate words? You see, separate words are not attached and they are separate words, hence the word separate. However, add-ons are the words, or rather the haruf, that get attached to the word itself, such as al. We are familiar with this harf, with this, it's not a harf exactly, it's a prefix, alright? So we are familiar with this al since section A, alright? And we know that there are many suffixes and prefixes that are used to bring about various changes in an ism, and as well as fi'l, of course. So when I talk about add-ons giving the stress to something, I mean that we are going to study some huruf that are going to be attached to the ism or to the fi'l, and that is going to bring about stress. Alright, for example, we already know al, okay, and we're going to study it in just a bit of more detail, alright, just to give you a bit more insight into the subject. And then we are going to study a thing called lam ta'kid. Now, what is lam ta'kid? Lam ta'kid is that little la that you see in the ayah, in the second ayah of Surah Al-Asr. Okay, so you've got Surah Al-Asr, wal asri, this is your oath, okay, jar majroor, alright. Then in the next ayah, you see innal insana. You already know innal insana. Okay, we have done this in the third lesson of section B. Alright. Then innal insana lafi khusrin. Now forget about la at this moment. You already know fi khusrin, in a huge loss. Okay, fi khusrin. Now what about this la that you see in between? This is called lam ta'kid. Alright, so innal insana lafi khusrin. This little la in between is called lam ta'kid, and we are going to study it in great detail inshallah. Okay, you'll be masters of these things inshallah, don't worry. So we've got lam ta'kid. By the way, in Arabic, stress is called ta'kid. Okay, this is something that you might have got from the title of this lesson already. Okay, so stress is ta'kid in Arabic. Okay, so we are done with al and lam ta'kid. Next is your stressed present tense. So if you want to put some stress to present tense, you put two kinds of add-ons to it. Okay, I'm not going to tell them right here in this very lesson, but I've got a separate lesson for each of these. This lesson is only for overview. Okay, so at this moment, simply remember that for the add-ons, we have got three scenarios, and they include the lam ta'kid, al, and the stressed present tense. Okay, so that's what. Finally, we come to the separate words. What are separate words? They are separate words that give stress to the statement. Okay, and I have divided them into 10 types, actually 12. Yeah, so you've got two hexagons over here, and you see name of action, aka masdar. Alright, so masdar is your name of action, and this is something that I had touched very briefly. I had defined this term masdar, or rather the name of action, in second lesson of section A. Alright, name of action is also called masdar. Okay, and I'll be telling you exactly what all these things are in their respective lessons. Then by means of a synonym, you can also produce stress in an Arabic sentence. Okay, then there are some patterns that are specifically used for putting stress. Okay, for example, qadir, alim, hakim, hamad, for example, right? So all of these are various patterns. Okay, next, there are some haruf or words that give, or that are used to show the person's astonishment. Okay, for example, we have the words wow, or superb, incredible, spectacular, and all these things. All right, so these are some words that show astonishment. Okay, so you could say that they kind of put some kind of stress. Okay, All right, next you've got some special words such as he himself went there to check. Okay, to check anything. So the word himself is a special word. Okay, you haven't really got any term for it, but he himself went there. First of all, what would be a regular sentence? The regular sentence would be he went there, right? But if you want to stress on it that he himself went there, then you're going to have to put some stress to it, all right? And the best way that we know is that he himself went there to check. Okay, similarly, if I say all of you will get a detention, okay, it doesn't exactly put too much of a stress to it, does it? It doesn't. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make it even more explicit. How? By saying that each one of you will receive a detention. So this each one of you, it's kind of a stress that is subliminal, but at the same time very powerful. Okay, so this is also a kind of stress that inshallah we're going to learn making. Then you've got separate stress words such as inna, qad, innama, and all these things. These are just the two examples out of many examples, all right? We have already done inna and we have done innama as well, and we did that in huruf and nasab in lesson 3 in section B, all right? So we have already covered this in a thing. We will do qad and many other words that are stress words. Why do I call them stress words? They are called stress words because they mean stress. They are words such as undoubtedly, verily, indeed, all right? So they are actually the stress words. That's why I called them stress words. Okay. Next, you've got the second hexagon, and it says rafa pronouns. So far we used pronouns in the manner that they are used in a regular manner, okay? So we use them in a regular manner. But now we are going to see how these rafa pronouns can be used to produce stress. Okay, for example, ulaika humul muflihun. All right. Now if this were a regular sentence, ulaika muflihun would be enough. Okay, because if you want to make a sentence, if that's a phrase, then you would have said ulaikal muflihun, all right? But here you're saying ulaika humul muflihun. So this hum is a rafa pronoun and it is there to give stress. Okay, so we'll learn about these situations in its lesson, inshallah. Okay, next you've got this oath thingy. So we all know why or when a person takes an oath, okay? We all know that it is a means of putting stress to the subject that needs to be discussed, okay? Then next we've got words, or yeah, we've got equivalents rather of words such as least, smallest, dearest, okay? We'll be covering these inshallah. Then we've got superlatives and comparatives. What are comparatives? Words or phrases such as better than or worse than, prettier, and then you always have than with it, all right? Prettier than, more intelligent than, all right? So you've got the IER or ER words or the more words, all right? They are different scenarios for comparatives. Then you've got superlatives. Superlatives are the words such as best, prettiest, most intelligent, all right? Now you always have the with them, all right? The best thing that happened tonight was so and so forth. Then the prettiest doll I saw was so on and so forth. Then the most intelligent person is sitting right in front of me, for example. Okay, so this is what the superlatives are. Now, for the sake of a definition, comparatives are the scenarios where you assign one object or one person partial superiority over the other. Okay, so for example, you are better than something. Okay, so if you've got two things and you're comparing between them, and you assign one object partial superiority over the other, that is comparative. Okay, and if you assign that object the absolute or total superiority over the other or all others, then that would be a superlative. Okay, so I guess we are, no, yeah, we're done. We are left with this one. So we are left with this last one, and what this is that it is actually a point of balagha and eloquence, all right? And however, I would discuss this thing briefly, very briefly, in these lecture series, inshallah. And that is because they are quite common, and they would help you understand the tone and the impact of the ayat in a better way, inshallah. Okay, so one of the ways of putting stress over a subject matter is by using the ism form instead of fail. And why does that put stress? That is because an ism is like a permanent thing, it is a timeless thing, okay? Because if you've got an ism, it doesn't depend on its existence in past, present, or future. Okay, it just exists. Okay, you haven't got a past tense for tree, you haven't got a present tense for tree, and you haven't got a future tense for tree. Okay, and this holds true for everything. So it's permanent. Okay, however, when you are using fail, you see that there is the issue of time. Okay, so it could either be, if you are talking about an action that could have, that particular action would have taken place either in past, or it's actually taking place at this moment, or it's going to take place in the future. Okay, so in a way you could say that it is like temporary, and it is not exactly permanent. Okay, so this is something that we come across in Surah Al-Fatiha, and we say Alhamdulillahi. Now this word Alhamdu is actually a noun, it is an ism. Okay, and it is therefore permanent, and it is not dependent upon the past tense, future, or present. It just exists. Okay, it doesn't need any time period to exist, it is just there. Okay, so that is the importance of using an ism, and that's the reason this is used in the ism form instead of using it in any fail form. All right, so nahmadu or anything like that, or ahmadu. All right, so it is not being used in muzari form or any other tense, it is being used in ism form. So this permanence kind of gives a stress to the subject that's being talked about. Okay, and inshallah we'll see a couple of examples for this thing in its respective lesson. So I hope that this brief overview and the entire schema of this lesson series, that is lesson 9, is clear, inshallah. All right, and the next lesson will be about the name of action and synonyms. Okay, so inshallah in 9a, in lesson 9a, we are going to learn about masdar, how there are different kinds of masadir, and how there are different kinds of patterns for masadir. All right, and how they are used. And then we are going to also address the issue of synonym. Okay, and that is to say how we can use a synonym to give stress. All right, so with that, I'm going to leave you guys, and I'll see you in the lesson of Mastar. So barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'anil Hakim. Allah Hafiz.